Legion War Games. Recently picked this up. Had my eye on it for a while. Played another game from this designer Godfrey Bailey called Red vs Reverse. That's the second Boer War. This one is the first Boer War, basically. So, what is the first Boer War? I'd heard of it. I'm not gonna let you know. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert. I knew it was in South Africa. I knew it was between the Boers and the British. But aside from that, I didn't know a great deal. I think if people do know about the Boer War, they tend to know a bit more about the second Boer War because there was a bit more going on. I guess it was a bit more of a favourable outcome for the British. This one was just kind of, I can see the Empire at the time being quite embarrassed by what happened in this time frame, and maybe rightly so. You know, I very much enjoy digging into Britain's colonial past. I just find it a very interesting and evocative period of time. Obviously a lot of controversy. I in no way condone the actions, but I just think it's a very interesting period in history, one which we still kind of feel the repercussions of today, in fact. So it's very interesting to get a chance to explore those lesser known topics in a game, which is, you know, primarily what Legion games are known for. They typically make games on more obscure topics, things you might not have heard of before. I guarantee you, just go on their website, you'll be like, oh, what the hell? What is that, you know? You want to know more. It's very intriguing. So yeah, I've had my eye on this for a while. I think this came out a while ago, like 2013, as a kind of like pretty rudimentary package put together by the designer. I think it's literally like hand-drawn and things like that. And then, yeah, this came out, I think it came out this year. It might have come out last year, or they maybe announced it last year. It says 2021 on the box, but I'm pretty sure this is quite a recent release. So yeah, like I said, I've had my eye on it for a while. I've seen a few unboxings. I watched Zilla Blitz's playthrough, which I really recommend for reasons I'll get into later. And I was sold basically on the concept and the game itself, because I've mentioned in a few of my other videos, I typically tend to prefer sort of Cold War modern games, anything sort of post World War II. It's not to say I don't enjoy anything before that time period, but this is the first game I've really played from this era, and I think I've got a bit of a bug for it now because well, I won't get too far ahead of myself. We'll talk about how I feel about the game later, but I think I enjoy challenge in my games, particularly my solitaire games, and I think this era in particularly presents a big challenge. And again, I'll get into that later. So, first Boer War. This is yeah, sorry. So it's 1880 to 1881. It's a very short war. I think a lot of people might not even call it a war as such. To me, it feels more like a kind of counterinsurgency, not a skirmish as such, because it was more extended than that. But when you look at the manpower involved, you know, you might think, how maybe you couldn't really call this a war. But anyway, so yeah, 1880 to 1881. So why did this happen? And I'm no expert. This is just from reading the design notes in the game and then doing some more research on my own. So essentially, the Boers are the white settlers of South Africa. They're Dutch colonists, basically, from back in the day. I think like 1700s they started getting there. Boer in Dutch, in Afrikaans, literally means farmer. So, you know, the Dutch Empire collapses sort of early to mid 1800s. Britain, who's got a massive foothold in Africa at the time anyway, kind of just sweeps in, takes control of a lot of those colonies, establishes rules, establishes government. A lot of people aren't very happy about that. So the Boers, they trek up north. They call it the Great Trek to the Transvaal region, which is a breakaway republic essentially. They declare their independence. Britain doesn't really care all that much. In fact, they like the fact they've gone because they've basically done all the legwork for them. You know, they've gone, they've settled, they've explored, they've set up farms, they've set up infrastructure. So if Britain eventually want to go, it's not going to be that hard. So they think anyway. So then Basically doesn't go very well for the Boers. Government's a disaster, everyone's broke, people living off the land. There's not much of a structure to life, let's say. And they start skirmishing with a lot of the local tribes, the Zulus, people like that, etc. So Britain come in, kind of help out, establish a rule of law, pledge themselves to the Boers, say they're going to make everything better. Sounds familiar, right? Boers are happy at first, they're cool with it, they're grateful. Britain have come in, kind of helped them financially, got the tribes off their back. And then basically 20 years down the line, Britain's kind of abandoned the situation. They're not really doing what they said they were going to do. They're not pulling their weight. The population starts to grow restless. Things get pretty tense. And this eventually culminates. Basically, two things happen in 1880, or a few years before. Basically, Britain becomes aware that there's quite a high amount of diamonds in this region, so that piques their interest. And they start kind of moving some people in, moving people around. Boers even more annoyed at this now, it's like, okay, you found our diamonds, now you care. Basically, they start trying to implement higher taxes, the British. And essentially the Boers, they get fed up, and this culminates in, I forget the names, basically a British officer kind of, he basically beat down a Boer, and it's culminated in this ambush where this company of British troops were passing through and got completely massacred. So that leads us up to this, basically. We've got a guy called General George Colley, I believe his name is. He is the governor of the region. He's not really spent much time there. Now all of a sudden, he's got this classic kind of military college guy, maybe some nepotism involved in getting where he is. And he decides, this is my chance, basically. He gets a force together and marches into this region, and it was a absolute disaster for the British. So if you look at the figures, basically, I think the Brits had like 2,000 men. The Boers were more or less a couple of hundred. And these guys, they're like farmers. There's no military structure for them, really. It's just kind of militias that have banded together to try and push the British back. And they did. Like, basically, British Army strolled in, didn't really know what they were doing. There was a lot of incompetence, a lot of supply difficulties. The weather was awful. They don't really know the area. They're not really motivated. The British government itself doesn't really care all that much. They'd rather just kind of leave the Boers to it, But this Colley guy is pretty insistent. He thinks he can handle it. And basically they lose 3 times in a row, very embarrassingly. And it all culminates in the Battle of Majuba Mountain, where British just kind of strolled in, thought they'd won, started hurling insults at the Boer camps down below, and then just got absolutely massacred, including Colley himself, who got shot in the back of the head whilst retreating. Well, that's the popular story anyway. So yeah, you've got basically these, it's like I said, it's more like counterinsurgency. You've got these highly motivated local forces. They know the area. They're really good hunters. They're really good horse riders. They're motivated to protect their homeland. And the British stroll in their bright red uniforms and just get absolutely, not massacred, but it was pretty embarrassing defeat for them, basically. So they just kind of wanted to sweep that under the rug. And as such, you just don't really hear much about it. Like, I have a lot of conversations with people. I'm British. Went to British school, obviously, and you just don't really learn about this kind of stuff. So it was a really cool opportunity to delve into that history a bit more. I don't need the game to delve into that history, but it helps. Just give well, it helps you to understand what you're doing in the game, and it's also just a nice way to jump off. You've got these names, these places, these events, and yeah, it's a really great way to start exploring the history. So anyway, yeah, Hill of Doves. I've waffled on now. The setup of the game. I don't know if I mentioned this is a solitaire only game. With most solo games, you could play a co-op. I don't know how fun that would be. So with that in mind, I'm good. I've got the board set up over there, or the boards in this case, as you'll see. I've done a couple of turns, and I'm just basically going to run through a turn with you, so you can get a feel of how the game actually plays and what you're trying to achieve, and then I'm going to come back and kind of wrap up with my thoughts, how I actually feel about the game.
Okay, so this is how the game is set up, and
already you'll probably think, okay, yeah, I've never really seen anything like this before. And it's very cool. So essentially you've got three different boards going on. You've got the strategic board here. So this is kind of like a really zoomed out view of what's going on. I'll get more into what these things mean and what the tracks are once I've gone through all the boards. Yes, we've got the strategic board here, the operational board here. So again, a bit more zoomed in. And then on the right, we've got the tactical board. So these two basically is where you're going to be playing a lot of the game. The strategic board is kind of like, it's almost just like a massive kind of admin center basically, where you keep a track of a lot of different things. But yeah, so you've got the tactical board, operational board, strategic board. So what are these? What locations are these showing? So this is the strategic board. We've got basically a whole massive zoomed out view of the region. So we've got South Africa, we've got the different kind of breakaway republics here. We've got Basutoland, Orange Free State, Zululand, and Transvaal. So this is the Transvaal Republic. This is where the Boers are. This is the breakaway republic, essentially. So you've got all these towns here. You've got Pretoria, obviously it's quite a familiar name, Lindenburg, Wakkerstroom, Standerton. And these towns are basically under siege from the Boers. And you're coming from Natal initially, and this is where you bring in reinforcements basically. So you've got Durban down here. This is where reinforcements come in. And basically you're trying to get your reinforcements up to Newcastle, Fort Amiel, which if you come over to the operational board, you'll see that this is Fort Amiel here. So this hex and this hex are the same hex basically. So once you get people in there, you move them over here. And once you get people up here to Mount Prospect, you move them into the British camp on the tactical board. So there's this really cool kind of like zoomed out different layers of the campaign. You've got really strategic zoomed out level, operational level, and tactical level. So here you're bringing in your reinforcements and you're trying to stop these towns from getting from falling basically to Boer sieges. Here is where you're kind of sorting these reinforcements and assembling these strategic operational columns, which kind of bring in the supplies. As you can see, there's a supply track here. So what you're trying to do basically, at the start of or the end of every week, more supplies come into your camp here, and you've got the ox wagon, and basically you've got to bring the supply all the way up in order to be able to get it over to the tactical board where you can actually use it. So there's quite a lot going on with this game, so I'm not really too sure what the best place to start is, but basically, like I said, a lot of the game takes place on these two boards over here. This one is important, the strategic board, but it's not the heart of the game basically. So there's kind of these three interweaving stages to the game. You've got the operational segment, the tactical segment, and the strategic segment. And it's quite a rigid sequence of play, which I'll show you in a second. But let's just kind of go over what exactly these tracks are telling you, like these tracks up here, what these are, and what's going on in general, like how do you win the game, what the goal of the game is. So if we come over to the strategic board, like I said, this is where you bring in your reinforcements and you're trying to prevent the fall of these towns to the Boers. Up here, you've got the actual time track. So you've basically got 12 weeks to win the game, essentially. So you've got the time track up here, which is also where reinforcements are. They'll be on the time track, and when it comes that turn, you bring them in, basically. This here is where you mark your assaults, which is very important. I'll get into that a bit later. You've got the Boer victory track here, and then here is this kind of like political discourse kind of section where you're trying to negotiate with the Boers, basically. So it starts off on the lowest section, and if it gets into any of these, you're going to start losing supplies, and if it gets here, you've lost the game. There's a number of ways that track can move. If a town falls, it moves. If you lose a battle, it moves, and you'll also flip one of those counters just to show that the Boers have won. If the Boers win 5 times, you lose, basically, because this forces it up twice. So it's very important to keep track of that, and that also becomes very important later with a few dice modifiers for certain things. So yeah, that's the strategic board. Right now I'm on the 3rd week. I'm about to start the 3rd week. So I had some naval reinforcements that came in, and they're slowly making their way up to Fort Amiel here. You might be able to see basically each one of these hexes is 36 miles. Each one of these hexes is 1.5 miles, and each one of these is 1,000 yards. So that's kind of the scale of what's going on. So yeah, that's the strategic board. There's also some important things here, which I'll get into as they come up. Again, sorry, there's a lot going on here, so I'm just trying to be as concise as possible without overwhelming you. And it'd be nice as well if you are going to pick this game up to kind of discover a few things for yourself. So yeah, here we have the operational board. Like I said, you've got Fort Amiel here. Got this really nice kind of period painting of the area. And yeah, you're just trying to make your way up this trail basically to bring in your supplies. So the supplies we have, we've got herds, so horses obviously, got medical supplies, rockets, case shot, artillery, shells, rifle cartridges, and kind of general ration supply, you know, like food and essentials basically. So yeah, you're trying to, at the start of the week, you'll get those supplies in. You've got to make your way up to the camp with them, at which point you can start actually using those supplies on this side of the board. So yeah, that's kind of all that's going on here. You've got the week track up there and you've got the weather. This table basically tells you how many supplies you get, and this, again, I'll get into why that's important shortly. So that's the operational board. And then over here with the tactical board. So this is kind of like the meat and potatoes of the game. Basically, this is where you're going to be doing the majority of your maneuvering and using your supplies, and this is where you'll win the game, essentially. So you've got these 10 objectives. You've got the British camp, Inquelo Plateau, O'Neill's Farm, The Ridge, Lang's Farm, Brownlow's Cop, Table Mountain, The Neck, Majuba Mountain, and Majuba Slopes. So those are your 10 objectives. The idea is you've got 12 weeks and a very limited number of troops to secure those objectives, basically. That's how you win the game. Over here, we've got Boer lagers, which is basically like, just represents the Boers' infrastructure, you know, it's where they get their supplies, kind of like the Boer military camps, things like that. So we've got the Coldstream lager here. On top of there, we've got the crack counter, which again, I'll explain as that comes in. We've got the Smith lager here with General Smith on top. He was kind of like a legendary Boer fighter who was just, you know, elite crack shot, organized a lot of raiding parties, a lot of ambush parties. He was kind of like the military mind of the insurgency, basically. So like thinking, I don't know, for example, thinking of Vietnam, this is like the equivalent of like Vo Nguyen Giap. And then we've got the Joubert lager up here. He's basically like the main political entity of the Boers. So yeah, you've got to take these 10 objectives. You want to kill Joubert and destroy all these camps, basically. So sounds relatively straightforward, but is a lot harder than it sounds. So down here we've got the British camp. This is where you assemble your forces. This is where they stay. Here you've got your orders, which I'll get into shortly. Up here you've got bombardment counters. You've got the British and Boer firepower track, and this is your supply track up here. So currently I've got, let me see, I've got 23 supply, 19 ammo, 5 artillery shells, 6 medical supplies, let me have a look, sorry, 3 case shot, 3 herds, 2 rockets. So, you know, I know just looking at that doesn't really mean much to you. It's a decent amount of supply. You'll see how that's actually implemented later. And there's another just great layer to this game. So yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to take in. But really, once you get to grips with it, it becomes quite, not straightforward, but like it's very free flowing. And then also, sorry, I forgot to mention here, this is completely optional, but I like to use it. It's just a little battle board. So again, I'll get into that as it comes up. So with that in mind, we're on the third week, about to start the third week, and basically we're gonna go through the entire week. So first things first, start day segment, and literally all you do for that, it is now Monday. So there we go. Weather segment. So what you're going to do here, basically just going to roll on this table and it's going to dictate the weather. So right now it's raining, which isn't bad, but isn't great either. So I've got my dice here, just going to roll 1d6. So we've got a 5, so check this out. 4 plus rain. Okay. So in this instance, we're just going to move this here into mud. And you might be able to see basically that's going to hamper the movement of your forces on this map and the tactical map as well. So it's raining, it's Monday, nothing new. We've got the night assault segment next. I'm not going to do this, but I will talk about that later. Now, okay, assemble operational column segment. So a column is what you need to escort this supply wagon up to the camp, basically. So to make a column, there's a couple of mandatory things, basically. So you need a leader. That can either be General Colley, or it can be one of these HQ units. We've got the 58th and the 60th HQ here. So we need a leader. We need at least one infantry company. So that's these guys here. 3 strength, they've got the NATO infantry symbol with them. And then it's up to you if you want to take any reserves. So reserves are basically any cavalry or any artillery. There's also rockets and a Gatling gun, which we might be able to see this turn. So the rule in general is you can take as many companies as you want, as long as you've got a leader. And then you can have a 2-to-1 ratio of reserves to companies. So let's say I took 2 infantry companies, I could take 4 reserves with me. In this instance, I'm just going to take these 3. There's a very specific reason I've done it this way, which I will get into shortly. So we've got the operational column set up here. We've got Colley, 1 infantry company, a cavalry section, and the wagon. So we're going to place it on Fort Amiel. It's the same with tactical columns, the way you put them together. I'll show you that again in a second. The limitation is basically, if you choose one of these HQs, you can only take units that are directly under their command. So if I chose the 60th HQ, I can only take those green units, but you can take whatever reserves you want with you, basically. So there we go, we've set up an operational column. That's step 4. Step 5, day assault segment. I won't do that just yet. I'll do that when it comes around next, so I'm going to skip that for now. Record assault segment, that would literally just be you put that little red arrow up there, which does become very important. So you've got record assault segment, doesn't quite relate to where we are yet. We've got the morning operational movement segment next. Okay, so if I had multiple columns, I'd check this British movement priority and it would tell me which one to move first. In this case, I've just got Colley. So it's raining. So as you can see, it's muddy. That means I'm going to get a -1 to my movement here. The base movement on this side of the board is 4. In this instance, I'm going to move 3. You may have seen there as well, if there was deep mud, I'd only be able to move twice. And that would also mean that this section here, the double drift, is flooded. Right now it's not, so I can move through there. If it is flooded, you can't move through there. So yeah, I can move 3 spaces. With the artillery, if it takes a hit, basically when it's on this side, it means it's horse-drawn. Whoops. If it's on this side, it means that it's manhandled. Basically, the horses have died. So in this case, we don't have to worry about that. We can only move 3. So we go from Fort Amiel, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've traveled 4.5 miles, basically. So we're getting closer to the camp. Not ideal. I'd like to have been able to move 4, but as I said in the intro video, historically the weather was awful here. So hopefully it won't get any worse. So that's this morning operational movement segment. We've got the event segment next. So basically, if you roll a 6, you have to draw an event card. Usually they're bad for you. Earlier in the game, they tend to not be that bad because you haven't actually made enough progress to for any of the events to really hurt you. But basically, if you roll a 6, you draw an event card. But there's a +1 if there's not been a British assault at Lang's Neck. So basically, all this area on the tactical board is Lang's Neck. So if you haven't made an assault at this point, you're going to get a +1 die roll modifier. That's why I said it's quite important. So it's really important in the game to keep up the pressure on the boars and assault them at least once a week. If I was playing without this video, I probably would have done an assault when I had the opportunity, but I'm just kind of trying to show you how this works and what the negative effect of that is, basically. So if I roll a 5 or a 6 now, I have to draw an event card. And lo and behold, I rolled a 5. So I've got the event deck here. Just going to draw one. Boar's Raid, Brownlow's Cop. So like I said early on in the game, this doesn't really matter. Basically, if Brownlow's Cop is here, if I had that objective under control, the Boars would ambush it. They've got it under control, so we're just going to discard this. We're just going to disregard that for now. So lucky break there. Okay, event segment. Next, we've got the ambush segment. So basically, there's 3 types of objective, and obviously you've got your operational column here as well. So again, apologies, there's a lot going on with this game. We've got farms, which are squares. We've got triangles, which are outposts. And we've got stars, which are main positions. So with that in mind, let's have a look. So you're basically going to roll a dice again. There's a lot of die rather. There's a lot of modifiers here. So we get a +1 if there's no British assault at Lang's Neck. So we've got that. We get a +1 for each Boer victory. They haven't won a battle yet, but you can see now basically the more battles they win, the more likely it is they're going to ambush you. And these ambushes are really nasty. And you get a +1 if there's an ox wagon in the operational column, which there is. You get a -1 if there's a mounted troop in an operational column. That's why I always take one of these cavalry units with me. So that's gonna, basically you have to roll an 8 for the operational column to be ambushed. This makes it, if the Boers haven't won, this basically makes it impossible for them to ambush the operational column. So what you do is you roll a dice. I rolled a 4 just now. If I didn't have that guy with me, that would have been a 7. If I rolled a 6, I would have been ambushed. Similarly over here, the farm only gets ambushed on an 8, so we're all good there. That can't happen yet. And these outposts only get ambushed on a 7, but I've made sure to put cavalry in there so they can't actually get ambushed. And the camp only gets ambushed on an 8. Some of these cards might force an ambush on you, so you could ambush your column, could ambush the camp. I forgot to mention as well, actually, if the camp falls, game over as well. So we've got past the ambush segment, all good there. Right, afternoon operational movement segment. So again, I can only move 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're getting closer, about halfway there. We've got the bombard lager segment. Can't really do this yet. Basically, if you're in Majuba Mountain, the Neck, or Table Mountain, you can start attacking those lagers there. Can't do that right now. Secure objective segment. So okay, so as I said, you're trying to secure these 10 objectives. How do you do that? It's not as simple as just having won the battle and having men there. Basically, what you need to do is, to control one objective, you'll also have to have captured 1 or more of the other objectives. It's a bit convoluted to explain, but it makes sense when you if you watch a video where someone explains it better, basically. So let's say, right, the British camp, okay, it's under my control, but it's not secure yet, which makes it liable for ambush. How do I get the British camp under control? So you come over here, you've got the British secure objectives table here. So let's have a look. British camp, control Majuba Slopes, Lang's Farm, O'Neill's Farm. So right now, I've got control of O'Neill's Farm. If I want to get the camp under my control, I need to control Lang's Farm and Majuba Slopes as well. Likewise, if I want to get O'Neill's Farm under my control, I need to control the Ridge and Inquelo Plateau. Certain objectives as well require you to have destroyed these lagers to control them. So it's not just as simple as strolling in, winning the battle. You have to control certain objectives, and you have to have certain things in the game completed before you can actually control the objectives. So that's not going to apply just yet. Transfer segment. Okay, so this basically is when it gives you the opportunity to move any of your troops between the camp and any of these objectives you hold. Again, I don't have the opportunity to do that yet because I haven't. I'm happy with where those guys are, and when I do an assault, you'll see why that's important. So next day segment. So if this was Sunday, we'd move into these 3 other segments. It's not right now, so we're just going to go straight back to the start. So it's quite quick playing once you get used to it. I really like the fact you've got these cards as well with the sequence of play on it. It just makes it nice and straightforward. Okay, so we start again. I'm going to move up to Tuesday. So we've got 5 days left of this week. Roll for weather. Okay, not good. So we're in 6. Deep mud. This is flooded, so I can't get past there. So not great. And you'll see, again, you'll see why it's important to get your supplies into the camp shortly. Night assaults, again, I'm not going to do that just yet because I don't really need to, and I'll explain that further in the video. Assemble operational columns, I'm not going to do that because I already did it. Now, day assaults, I will do that this time. Okay, so we're going to move over now to the tactical deck, basically, and I'm going to move the camera over here. So, let's have a think. So we're going to assemble a tactical column, and it's, like I said, it's basically the same as those operational columns. I'm going to take this stack of the 60th Infantry. So I've got the HQ, and I've got 5 infantry underneath there, and I can take twice as many reserves. I've only got 1 available reserve, and that's the field gun, so I'm going to take that with them as well. You can move more than 1 tactical column at a time, but right now I'm just going to do this one. So next you're going to roll for your orders. So these are your orders here. Basically the orders dictate what formation your units take. So like I said, Collie, who is historically quite incompetent, he loves the mass formation, which is the worst one basically. There's 3 types of formation. There's line, extended, and mass formation. So I've got the 60th HQ. He gets a good modifier. So hopefully I can get extended. So you roll 4, check this. 4 usually would be line, but the 360th HQ gets +1, so we're in extended formation, which is very nice. You will see why. Okay, next up, where do I want to attack? I'm going to attack the ridge, so I'm going to place that there. The stipulation with where you attack is basically you can't cross through any of these hexes which have a yellow triangle in them. That's called a rifle fire hex. So you can't just stroll off anywhere and attack. You've got to build your way up. You've got to build your way through it, basically. So right from the start of the game, the only 3 places you can attack is O'Neill's Farm, Majuba Slopes, and Lang's Farm. As you can see, I've attacked O'Neill's Farm. I won the battle there. I attacked Inquelo Plateau and won the battle there as well. So I want to take the ridge, because if I can take the ridge, I can get O'Neill's Farm under my control. So we've put the rifle fire, so we've put the orders countering the rifle fire hex. Like I said, if you made 2 tactical columns, you'd have to march them separately, and there's a whole procedure for that. In this instance, I don't need to do that. So it basically states if you just make 1, you just pop it right in the rifle fire hex. So next up is the bombard segment. So you might be able to see, I've got a mountain gun here in Lang's Farm, and I've also got a field gun here in Inquelo Plateau. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the corresponding bombardment token up here. So we've got N5, N60, and I'm going to pop them both on top of the ridge there, just to basically show that I am I'm bombarding them, I'm assaulting them. And you'll see the effect of that later. So start bombardment, done. Now we've got the commando strength segment. So you'll have a draw cup with your balls in there. Basically, there's a couple of different types in there. You've got patrols, Veldkornet Scups, which are basically your kind of standard troops, and you've got to check the back of those. And they might bring in this crack shot counter or smit as well, which gives a positive for battle. Okay, so what do we need to do? So we're going to draw counters. Boars at main position, you draw 4 counters. This is not a main position, this is an outpost. Boars at outpost, 1 counter. Okay, so we draw 1 counter no matter what. I'll take a look at that in a second. Next, +1 counter for each company assaulting a main position. I'm not assaulting a main position, so don't worry about that. +1 counter for each supporting objective. Now, supporting objective is any objective under ball control, which is no more than 2 intervening hexes away. So basically, they're going to get support from Majuba Mountain and Majuba Slopes. So basically, if you're doing one of these single engagements, it's not quite as complicated. If I was doing multiple engagements, the boars would check their battle priority table, and they might rather send more troops to a different objective because it's more important to them. And also, if you time your assaults right, you can get this overlapping assault, which also means you draw less counters. So we're going to draw 3 for this, 1 for the objective itself and 2 for these 2 supporting objectives. So let's have a look what we've got. So we've got a 3 strength Veld Cornet Scup, a 2 strength, nothing on the back. Now this one is a patrol. Okay, they don't have a combat strength, they just get in the way basically. Sorry, the lighting is pretty bad. But on the back, if you look, it says crack. So basically what that means is you put this counter back and you take this crack counter. So this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So we're going to move over to the battle board now. You don't have to do this, I just like to do this. So we've got the crack and the 2 regular Veld Cornet Scup. And then basically I'm going to put my forces in. So you put any reserve forces down here. So you put the cavalry down there, and then we've got the troops here. And you put the HQ down there as well. So next up, that's all set up to go. We've got the, we skipped those 2 because that would be if you're doing a night assault. The isolated segment doesn't apply here. Basically what that means is if there's any patrols or General Smith comes in, some counters have his name on the back, he'll come in if you pick one of those. If they're there, if they're in the objective without any support from regular Veld Cornet Scup, you'd put them back and you've won. In this instance, that's not the case. Next up, we've got the start bombardment segment. So this is where you're about to see where these supplies come into play. So, if you remember, well, hopefully you remember, it was only like 2 minutes ago, we've got these 2 artillery counters here. We've got a mountain gun and a field gun. So a field gun will give the Boers a -2 strength, and a mountain gun will give them a -1 unless it's firing on a mountain, basically. So for bombardment, the artillery uses these shells. So they've got 5. I put that down to 3 because there's 2 of them. And I've just got to remember that, basically. So yeah, you can start to see now why it's important to get those supplies up. So that's cool. Bombardment is sorted. There is rockets in the game. You'd have to roll a 3 for it to be successful because it was still quite an experimental technology at the time, basically. So we've got that. There are Boers, don't worry about that. That would basically mean you've won the battle without having to fight. So we've got the Boer firepower segment now. Okay. So basically you're going to calculate the value on the counters. So we've got a 3, a 5, and a 2, so that's 10. If Smith was there, they get a +4. If I was in mass formation, they'd get a +3. So basically these orders represent, you've got line, extended mass. So mass would be all your troops are diverging on the position in like this massive clump, basically. So it's very easy for them to pick you off. Line is just standard. I mean, you're in a line, basically. So you don't get any modifiers for that. That's kind of what you hope for. And what you really want is this extended formation, because that'll actually give the Boers a -3. If there's certain locations, I think it's Brownlow's Cop and the mountains, where the Boers are crowning the heights, that would give them a +1. That doesn't apply here. So we've got 10, -3 because I'm an extended, and then -3 again because of that bombardment. So they've now got a score. Their firepower now is 4, which is a relief, down from 10. Okay, so they've got 4 firepower. Where are we? Next up, basically you just stop bombarding. Just put these back. Put these bombardment things back, basically. That's that. For outpost consolidation, so if you're attacking one of these outposts, one of the triangles, you basically roll, and on a 3 or more, they're going to deploy sangers. Sangers are just basically these kind of barricades, so you just take it from here, pop it in there, and you'll see what that does in a second. So they knew you were coming, they've had time to build defences. Now it's the British firepower segment. So let's total this up. So we've got 15, okay? 15 firepower, -1, because the Boers are behind sangers, so we've got 14 firepower. Nice. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the ammo track by 5 because there's 5 people firing down to 4, so I've got 14 ammunition left. So yeah, we've got 14 firepower versus 4 firepower. Next up if I wanted to, I could commit reserves to the battle. I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that in this instance, but if I did, I'd just move up this artillery. And if artillery are supporting, in fact, I will do it for this one just because I'll show you. Artillery, if they're bombarding, they use these shells. If they're engaging in combat like this, they use case shot instead. So I'll move that down from 3 to 2, which puts our firepower up by 3. So now we've got 17 to 4. And there's no dice in this, basically. Next up, you divide the British firepower by the Boer firepower. So 17 into 4. There's no remainders. It's basically over 2 to 1. So it's 3 to 1 technically, but it doesn't go any higher than 2. So then you reset this track. And then there's a result segment. So yeah, like I said, this is completely diceless. And basically what you're trying to do is get 2 to 1 odds and winning. So 2 plus Boers overrun. So I don't get any casualties and I've defeated the Boers basically. If it was 1 to 1 strength, I'd roll again. On a 1 to 3, the British would retreat and lose. Each one of these would take a hit basically, which means you'd have to use your medical supplies later. On a 4 to 6, the Boers would fall back and you still take a hit. If you retreat, you have the option of doing a cold steel charge, which is... Apologies, I had some technical difficulties there. Yeah, as I said, if you retreat, you have the option of doing this cold steel charge, which is kind of like an all or nothing last-ditch attempt. It's quite risky. That involves basically adding up some modifiers over here and rolling a dice. I won't get into that just yet. So yeah, as I said, basically you want 2 to 1 odd. You want over 2 to 1 odds, which is going to guarantee you a win, and it's gonna mean you don't take any damage. If you get 1 to 1 odds, there's a chance you'll definitely take damage. Basically, you'll either lose or retreat. And if the Boers, if your firepower can't be divided by the Boers' firepower, if it's lower than 1 to 1, you lose basically, and each one of your units takes 2 hits. So if you take 1 hit, you just flip them. They reduce strength. And if you take 2 hits, they go into the hospital down here in the camp, basically. So in this instance, I won. I'm going to put the crack counter back here on the Coldstream Lager and put these 2 back into the Boer draw cup. And then there's a couple more steps. So we've got the results segment, casualties segment. I didn't take any casualties. If Collie had been with us, we'd roll a 6. We'd roll a die, and on a 6, he'd die. If Smith had been there, it'd be the same for him. British routed or retreat segment doesn't apply. Basically, like I said, that just means you take the hits and fall back. Boers overrun, so they're gone. What you do now is if you capture an outpost, you roll, and on a 4, I got 2, doesn't count. You'd basically get to keep this this barricade, this Sanger's marker. So yeah, I basically that's an overview of the combat. That's one of the more simple ones. And the cool thing is, and again, I'll get more into this when I do my review segment. It's the combat. You make the combat as easy or difficult as you want. Basically, in these earlier stages, it's a bit easier, but it gets ridiculously hard later on. So now, basically, I control the ridge, but I haven't secured it. So I just put the flag like that. If it's like that, in my head, it means it's secure. So that's sort of the ridge is under British control. Put the stack in there. Pop the orders back there. Okay, so now that's the tactical section done for the day. We're going to move back to the operational segment and see where we're at. So record assaults. So literally all you do there. Oops. Sorry, it's not going well today. All you do there is you move this, and it just indicates you've done an assault that week. So you're not going to get those negative DRMs basically. Sorry, I thought this video was going well up until now. Okay, so tactical segment done. We've recorded the assaults. So what's next? Morning operational movement segment. Now, if you remember, it's deep mud and it's raining, so we can only move 2. So we've moved up to Schuingut. Sorry, my Afrikaans isn't great, or rather it doesn't exist at all. Event segment. So now, as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, if I rolled a 5 and I hadn't done an assault, I have to roll a 6 now, so it just makes the odds of that happening a bit better. So no event. Ambush won't count again because I've got the cavalry there, and I've done an assault, and I've got cavalry lying around in those objectives too, so that's not going to matter now. But basically, as soon as you lose your first battle, these ambushes become more and more prevalent, and they're really tricky to defend against as well. So we've got the afternoon operational movement segment now. We'd move 2 usually, but because the double drift is flooded, I can't move past there. So that's a bit of a nightmare. It's Tuesday, and we haven't replenished our supplies, so not great. Luckily now, like, my supply isn't too bad. But later on in the game, like, if you can't get that supply through, then you're screwed, basically. So there's that. Bombard lagers, again, we can't do that yet because we haven't taken Majuba Mountain or the Neck or Table Mountain, so I'll skip that. Secure objectives segment. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. So if I look here, to secure O'Neill's farm, I need to control the ridge and Inquelo Plateau, which I now do. So I'm just going to shift that there. So I now control O'Neill's farm, and basically that means an ambush can't happen on a roll, but it could still happen from the draw deck, from the event deck. Transfer segment. Okay, so basically with your tactical columns, you can only form a tactical column if it's in a camp. So right now I've got a significant amount of manpower up here on the ridge, and I've not got that many back at camp. So this is a really cool and quite tricky part of the game. It's a bit easier early on, but as you start to take more objectives, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. So basically what this means is you get to just transfer units from any controlled objectives in the camp back and forth between each other, basically. So I'm actually going to move this mountain gun up here. I'm going to move this field gun here, because I should have mentioned, actually, to be able to have done the bombard, I need to be at least 2 spaces away, so they're in a lot better position to be able to do that now. I'm not too worried. Actually, I'm going to leave 1 infantry company in there as well, just for good measure, because if I can't get an assault going at the start of the next week, I want to leave as much manpower in there as possible. So I'll put those guys back in the camp. So that's the transfer segment done. And now we've got the next day segment. So, like I said, usually if this was a Sunday, you go through these extra steps. I will get to that later, but it's not. It's a Tuesday. So we just go back up here, and we're into Wednesday. So you get a gist, basically. That's how the week goes. It's a mixture of bringing up your supplies or trying to, hoping for the best weather-wise, and then, actually assembling your tactical columns and doing combat down here. I did forget to mention, actually, and this is, Colley's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like I said, historically, he was a bit incompetent, and they've modeled that into the game, which is cool. Colley can form a column of 2 mixed units. So if I did it with the HQs, I could only take those red or green infantry units. Colley can take both, but Colley loves mass formation, so he gives a negative modifier for that orders roll. So a lot of the times, you'll have a significantly more powerful force, but he'll probably order you to go in and assault in mass formation, which is a bit of a nightmare because that gives the Boers extra firepower. And so you can see basically, like, these objectives up here. If I was to attack Lang's farm right now, it would be really difficult because there's so many supporting objectives near it. So you've really got to make your way through methodically and really think about what you want to take out and when. I'll touch on Majuba Mountain later because that is a very interesting part of the game. But yeah, you can see, you get a sense of the game there. With the night assaults, I know I didn't really show you how that works. Basically what that means is you have to do it in mass formation. There's going to be a negative DRM, not DRM, there's going to be a negative fuel firepower, but it does mean that because you're taking the Boers off guard, they're not going to draw from these supporting objectives, so there's a chance that you could... 1, there's a chance no one will show up at all, and 2, if they do, it's going to be in significantly lower numbers, but it is a risk, and you get 3 of those, basically, throughout the game, so it's up to you when you use those. So, yeah, like I said, we're in Wednesday now. I'm just going to roll on the weather because I'm curious. 5. Okay. There is a -1 if it's in deep mud, but that would still mean it's still raining. So basically, Collie and his column are trapped here until Thursday. With this, as you saw, like a lot of the time, some of the things just don't apply. So a day turn can be as long or as short as you want it to be, basically. What I'm going to do now is, instead of just showing you the rest of the week, I'm just gonna skip to Sunday basically, and we'll take it from there, and then I'll move over and show you the strategic board too. Okay, so I played through till Sunday. Not ideal at all. As you can see, Collie and his caravan have not been able to make it past the double drifts because of the flooding. So basically, I'm not going to be able to receive any of these supplies, which is not good. You'll see why in a second. So yeah, I've not been able to make it up there because of the heavy rain. That actually hasn't happened to me before. It's been close a few times. Like ideally, what I like to do is get them up early in the week and then send them back down later in the week, because they need to come back here in order to be able to escort the supplies next week. So yeah, like I said, not good. They're stuck. So now we're going to come over. We've got the British camp supply segment. So this is where you're going to use all of your rations and your medical equipment and things like that. As it stands, I haven't taken any casualties, so I can't show you how that works. I will show you just in a second, just if I had taken casualties. So first thing we're going to want to do, we're going to want to count up the amount of troops, reserves, companies, etc. that we have in the camp and in the surrounding areas. The HQs don't count, so I've got 5 infantry companies here. I've got 4 of the 58th Infantry companies, so that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I need to use 14 rations, basically. So we come up here, you can see I've got 23 rations, so I'm going to be down to 19. And because I missed a week's worth of supply, this could potentially be quite nasty later on. Say, for example, so I've got the ridge under control. Let's say I lost O'Neill's farm, that went back to boar control from an ambush or an event or something. That would mean that no one could get supply to them, basically. And if I didn't have enough rations, you roll on this table here, and on a 4, a company's going to take a hit, so that just shows them starving, basically. So yeah, and similarly, let's say this guy took a hit in a combat. All I'd do is, first of all, you'd have to be back at the camp. I just move this down 1. And similarly, if they'd taken 2 hits and they're in the hospital, I'd move it down 1 again. And then next turn, I'd have to spend another point of supply medical supply to get him back to full strength. So that's really cool. If they're in Fort Amiel, is basically, you can see here, that's the next segment, Fort Amiel supply segment. That basically, the game implies there's supply here, kind of abstractly represented. And if you can roll a 3 or more, they get to use that supply, basically. Also the herds, like I said earlier, the cavalry and the artillery are horse-drawn. If this side is showing they're manhandled. So if they're back at camp, you can use one of your horse tokens to get them back mounted, basically. So yeah, Fort Amiel section is not going to apply here. Okay. Ooh, okay, right. This is really bad. Because, and I should have had the foresight to do this, really. I was just hoping the weather would let up a little bit. Because Collie and the supplies are stuck here, the ox wagon isn't at camp, basically, so I can't actually load any more supply in, which is not good. I need to double check if I do lose that. I'm pretty sure I do. I'll amend that in my post thoughts afterwards if I find out otherwise. So let's say, for example, though, that this wagon and these guys were back at camp. You've got this table up here, you just roll. I rolled a 1, you check, okay, I get 7 rations. I put it in the caravan. Same for the cartridges, shells, case shot, rockets, medical and hoods basically. But in this instance, because I'm stranded, I'm not going to get that this turn. So what I'm going to have to do is in the next week, I'm going to have to spend time bringing them back down to camp. I'm going to have to wait it out there basically till Sunday, and then I'm going to have to get my supply back up. I'm doing decently with ammo and food, so it's not too bad, but fingers crossed I can get them back in. Okay, so that's all sorted. End phase segment. So now we're going to move over again to the strategic board. Okay, so we've got the strategic movement segment. Earlier in the game, I brought in these naval reinforcements. Next week, the Indian column will come in. They're all down here because there's a lot of them. So you get basically 10 more infantry units, a load more cavalry, and some naval infantry as well, which gets really handy. And again, it varies how long it takes them to get there. I've played this maybe 7 or 8 times now, and only twice have I actually seen them arrive, and only once have I actually been able to use them. So it's quite tense. You're like just waiting for them, like please get there. But we've got the Bode company here. I thought they misspelled boat when I first saw that. I had a bit of a chuckle about that. So they arrived in Durban and they managed to move 3 hexes last time. So strategic movement section. I'm just going to roll a die, whatever you call it. I've rolled a 2, which is really nice. So they're going to move 3 hexes basically. So they are going to arrive in Fort Amiel. So I'll switch them back over here. Nice. Okay, so we've got a naval infantry arrived. We've got the rocket tube gunners, who are very useful for assaulting Majuba Mountain. And we've also got a Gatling gun, which is pretty cool, pretty badass. That takes 2 ammo, and you have to roll on a table because, remember, this is quite an experimental, these 2 are quite experimental technologies at the time. So there's a decent chance that will jam up. Okay, so strategic movement section is done. Reinforcement segment doesn't count here because I already brought those guys in. You might be able to see I've got the Indian column arriving next turn. So basically next week I'm just going to pop them in there and they're going to start that process. So now we have the negotiation segment. This is the track up here, the politics track, which I mentioned earlier. So we're going to roll on there. If it's January 31st, February 27th, you're gonna do a +1 basically. To this roll, if it's February 22nd to March 27th, it's going to be +2. It's -1 for each one of these lagers you've managed to destroy. And basically on a roll of 5, you're going to move this up. And like I said, once this gets here, it's game over. And you don't want this to move, basically. So let's have a look. It's a 6, not good. So that's going to move up 1. So that means a couple of things. 1, I'm running out of time. 2, it decreases the amount of losses I can take, basically, and it gets you closer to getting your supply trashed, so not good. Next up, we've got the Boer Siege segment. This doesn't start, you'll see on the calendar up there, this doesn't start until January 31st, so we don't have to worry about that too much now. Basically what this is you roll for these, and if these flip over to Boer control, you move that politics counter down as well. There's a +1 modifier if it's between February 28th and March 27th. There's a +1 if there's been no assault at Lang's Neck. Luckily for me there has been, and there's a -1 for this Pretoria garrison as well, and on a 7 or more they'll surrender, but that can't actually that can't happen yet basically. It's my favourite one, the win war segment. If British control all 10 objectives, Hill of Doves ends immediately and the British win the war. Haven't managed that yet. And then you've got the end of phase segment. So you basically put this back, move this up on the 4th week now, and going to restart over here basically and start all over again. So yes, this is quite a procedural game. Again, sorry, I keep getting too ahead of myself. I won't talk about this too much now. It is a procedural game. Most solo games are, but that does not mean it's not fun or that it's dry or anything like that. I'm just going to show you briefly just two things. First, I'm just going to show you how an ambush works. So let's say, for example, I've rolled an 8. This, the operational column is going to get ambushed. You just take one of these ambush counters, whoops, pop it in there, and like everything else in the game, you've got a separate deck which takes you through what to do. So we're getting ambushed here. Okay, so we're going to draw the ball commandos. This is a British camp. No, it's not a British camp. It's an operational column. So it's one counter per company. I've only got one company. So let's draw. Check the back. Ooh, okay, so he is going to be replaced by the crack shot. As you can see there. So I know my camera work isn't the best. It's a pretty rudimentary setup I got going on. I'm working on it. So operational column, and then +1 counter if Oxwagon convoy is in the operational column. It is. So we're going to draw another one. Okay, not good. Right, so that's that. Isolated segment again. If it was just a patrol or a SMIC counter there on their own without any veiled coordinate scope, we'd put them back. Not the case. No ball segment, doesn't apply. Ball firepower. So we've got 7. That's it. There's none of these modifiers are going to come in. British firepower segment rather. We've got 5. There's a -1 if there was no general or HQ. Luckily, we've got Collie with us. And we're not in this. We're not crowning the heights. If we were in this here, if we were in Schuenskut, whatever the hell it's called, we'd get a +1, but we're not. So it's 7 to 5. Bombard segment. If I had any artillery nearby, I'd be able to bombard them. I don't. Firepower quotient. So it's 7 to 5. We divide British firepower by boar firepower. 5 does not go into 7. It does, but in the case of this game, it doesn't. So, result segment, British overrun, 2 hits each. Not good. Okay. So basically what that would mean then is, because these guys are coming from Fort Amiel, we'd pop them in the hospital box. Like that. He's also lost his horse. Not good. Casualty segment. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Now, because Collie was present, we're going to roll. On a 6, he'd be killed. Luckily, he's not. But yeah, that's how an ambush works, basically. Again, it's kind of like the combat. It's a little bit different. You just go through these cards, basically. So that's that. Just show you that quickly. Thank God that didn't actually happen. Put those geezers back in there. Back over there. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, if you did want to make multiple assaults in one turn, let's say you've just got these 2 tactical columns, pop them in the British camp. So let's say then, let's just roll quickly for the orders, line and extended. So the HQ 360, let's say they want to attack Lang's Farm, they want to do that, they're doing that in extended formation. HQ 58, they're going to attack Medulla Slopes, and they're going to do that in extended formation. So you check this British movement table up here. Sorry, I won't get too close there. Basically, if we have multiple tactical columns, it would dictate that Collie moves first, then General Wood, then HQ 360, HQ 260, HQ 58, HQ 98. So HQ 360 is going to move before HQ 58. So what you do is then, so you've assembled your tactical columns, you've got the orders together. You have a finite amount of time to reach your objectives, basically. And it's going to... Bombard is also going to suffer from that as well, because it's quite hard to explain, basically. I'll show you. With the bombard, it can only take place during a very certain hour, so if you don't make it by that hour, the bombard can't happen. So we've assembled our tactical columns, now we've got tactical movement. Okay, so you move the tactical time track up 1. You roll a die, whatever you want to call it. Roll a 6. It's +1 for deep mud. 6, move 1 hex. So you're going to take the shortest path possible. So just there. Now they're going to move, and roll again. 5, so that's 2 hexes. 1, 2. And then we move this time track and keep going like that until they get there, basically.
if they get there to these objectives within an hour of each other, it means the boars they're caught up. Basically, they're not going to be able to react as much as they could, and it's going to mean as well that they're going to prioritize certain objectives over the other ones. So it's a risky move. It can really drain your resources, but if you can pull it off, it's worth it basically. But you have to get there with 3 hours to spare. So the tactical time track starts at 6 a.m. You need to get to these objectives by at least 4 p.m. to be able to actually assault. If not, then you've just wasted all that time for nothing, basically. So yeah, that's the other thing I just wanted to show you briefly. So yeah, I'm going to head back over to the table and just wrap up with my final thoughts.
Okay, so that's an overview of what to expect in a turn or a week of Hill of Doves. That was the early section of the game. So as you saw, it's quite a rigid procedural sequence of play. Like you've got this card, you're going through the cards, tells you what to do, which makes it really nice when you're learning the game, because a lot of the information is just contained on those cards, as opposed to having like four big player aids. And as you saw as well, not every section, not every step is going to apply all the time. So you might have one move in the week which could take half an hour. The rest could literally take like 45 seconds if you're not doing anything. So yeah, that's generally what you're going to be doing in a turn. You're going to be bringing up your supplies, you're going to be moving your troops around the objectives you've captured, you're going to be trying to capture objectives, you're going to be trying to put together these columns to maintain that supply level. You get it up to the camp, but then you've got to get guys back down to get it back up for the next week. As you saw as well, the weather, you're really hoping and praying the weather's going to let up so you can actually get your supplies through. In that instance, I've lost a week's worth of supply basically, which is going to hamper me massively in the long run. So yeah, hopefully you got a sense of how the game plays and what you're expected to actually do. So what do I think? I love the game. I absolutely love it. I think it's great for a number of reasons. I think the theme and the gameplay work so well together in what it's setting out to do, to represent this very specific battle. You've got that kind of, those elements of those acts of God, like the weather. You can't really do much to get past that. There's a few cards which kind of mean you can get past the flooded section. You've got those orders. I really love that. Like you get your troops together, but it's not up to you what the officer's going to order them to do. He might order them to go in mass formation, which is really silly. And again, that models that kind of incompetency of the force that was there really well. You've got that awesome kind of feeling of making ground, doing these assaults. Like the early assaults are really easy, and it lulls you into this false sense of security. Like, yeah, I'm just fighting these farmers or whatever. But as the game progresses and you start attacking those main positions, they show up in force basically. And then once you've secured those positions, once you've captured those positions, you're at the mercy of being ambushed. So like I said, historically in Hill of Doves, the Battle of Majuba Mountain was kind of the decisive moment where Britain pulled out basically. And in history, basically they strolled in there. In the game, you can just stroll in there really easily. But the longer you stay there, the more you have to commit your manpower to keeping that objective secure. Like every time I've taken Majuba Mountain in this game, it's been the reason I've lost basically, because I just keep getting ambushed and I don't have enough supply or enough men to actually keep control of that objective. So that's another really cool part of the game, the kind of the difficulty scaling. As it starts off, it's quite easy. The first couple of weeks, you're thinking, oh, this can be a cakewalk, and then it just gets harder and harder and harder the more your supply gets hampered. I got lucky there, my reinforcements came in quite early. They could potentially be stuck for weeks. You might not even see them arrive until like the last week, and by that point it could be too late. If you overcommit in the initial few weeks before your reinforcements arrive and you've captured a load of objectives, the chances of you being ambushed are greater. When the Boers win a battle, the chances of you being ambushed are greater, and the more you get ambushed, the more you lose. You've lost basically before you even know it. So I've never actually made it further than 7 weeks. And again, you've heard me say I love challenge in my solitaire games, so that's a big tick for me. I really love the kind of free-flowing aspect where you're switching between these boards, you know, it's really cool. You've got this one hex which actually represents different points on different maps. I love the artwork, I love the counters, I love, like I said, I've not really played anything from this era before, and I think I've got a bit of a bug for it now with those kind of formations and how limited you are in with your weaponry and your ammunition and things like that. And you know, I think you could look at that map, the operational map in particular, it's just a straight line of hexes, and you think, well, you know, that's boring. I'm just going to be moving them up and down, but it's so much more than that. Hopefully that came across in the gameplay there. And again, I just love these sequence of player cards. I think it helps you to move through it quickly. I found now that I can get through one day in maybe 10 minutes, depending on what I'm doing on the tactical board. I love this headache of trying to spread your units out, and the more ground you take, the harder it is for you to take more ground, because your forces are spread out between the map basically, and it just becomes a bit of a nightmare to try and sort through that logistically. You've only got so much artillery as well, and without that artillery you can't attack those lagers. So it's really, you've got these awesome aspects of the game. You've got the supply management, you've got the troop management, you've got the logistics where you're moving around, trying to figure out where to put everybody, hoping that they don't advance on the politics track, that these towns don't fall. So it's a very stressful game, but not in a bad way. It's not stressful because it's unplayable. It's stressful because it's designed to be stressful. And you know, I keep saying historically this was a disaster for the British, and I really like being put in that situation where you're trying to fight history. And I think that the game excels in that regard. I feel like it's a really perfect marriage of theme and mechanics. But, and this is quite a big but, the game, I think a lot of people have actually given up on, because it is a bit of a nightmare to actually learn. You've got, it's basically 3 rule books. You've got this example of play book, this introductory book, which is going to take you through all the components, and the rule book itself. The rules are written quite, I like the style, the way the rules are written. It's quite this casual, almost like conversational style, but because it is quite an abstract game, and because there's not really much like it, and it's like I said, it's quite free-flowing, it's quite hard to know when you've got to switch between the boards and what it is exactly you're doing, how to actually secure the objectives. And you think, oh, if combat's that easy, surely I can just stroll into all these objectives. But then obviously, I've covered that, you overcommit, you lose all your supply, and you've put like 20 guys in to take care of one guy basically. I guess, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked, but yeah, learning this game was quite difficult. Zilla Blitz is another really good YouTuber. He has a really good playthrough. I recommend watching that. That helped me out a lot. And there's someone called Glenn Saunders on Board Game Geek, who's put together this really nice introductory like help package basically to get you through learning the game. Because yeah, it's just a bit, everything you need to play the game is in that rule book, but it's buried quite deep, and there's no index, nothing's quite like, there's not a lot of bullet points, it's just quite thick paragraphs, so it can be a bit of a nightmare. Like the first time I played it, I was just scratching my head, like, when do I move these guys into the camp? When do I move the supply over? Once you get past that, it's an amazing experience, but yes, just be aware, it is quite a hard game to learn, but luckily there's quite a lot out there to help you get through that. Another thing is that because the game is so hard, you'll find you'll lose. I found anyway, I lose a lot anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. Typically, I lose the game, which is fine. You know, that's cool. But then it's one of those games where you're quite eager to get started again, but the start of the game is quite slow, in that you're just bringing up your initial forces, trying to get a good foothold. So it can be a bit frustrating if you make it quite far and you want to play again. You set it back up, you might find you don't quite have the energy to do it again. So I think it would have been nice if they included like and this is something I've been thinking maybe I'll put on Board Game Geek or something, like a kind of midpoint start where you're a bit more established. Because I like the fact that, you know, like the first couple of times I played the game, I had that massive stack of units from the Indian column sitting there ready to come in. I never got to use them, you know, it took me a good 15 hours of playing the game before I even saw those come into effect. So that's really cool. I like that a lot, you know, kind of, it's not locking you out, but it's keeping a few things away from you. So as you progress the game, you've got these different units coming in. It's really cool when your Gatling guns come in and your rockets and things like that. But yeah, I think it would be nice if there was kind of like a midpoint scenario where you could kind of pick up halfway through, you've got a few troops in the hospital or whatever, you haven't got the best supply, but you've got a bit more access to kind of just feel out what kind of strategies are best for that later part of the game, because I feel like I've got the first part of the game down quite well now. I'm not going to go into my strategy because I think you should make your own. I will say maybe it's not always best to do as many assaults as you can early on in the game, but yeah, I think it would be cool if you could kind of experiment around a bit more with that, with like an official scenario. Obviously there's nothing stopping me from doing my own or just doing that anyway. But yeah, this scaling difficulty throughout the game is just so cool. Like, the more the Boers win, the more they're going to ambush. The more they ambush, the likelihood is they're going to win because they're going to take you off guard, and they're better. You've got this kind of normal, formal infantry. They've got these guerrillas, you know, and it really does feel like you're fighting a conventional war against those who aren't using conventional tactics. So that's really cool. I like the fact you don't really know who's gonna turn up to these objectives, and there's this really interesting tactical thinking of which objectives to actually take first. So yeah, again, like, just that marriage of theme and mechanics to me is amazing. It's so unique. I love the 3-layered aspect to it, and you know, there is just a lot of aspects to it I love. The sequence of play is a double-edged sword, really, because if you've done everything you want to do in a week and you're just kind of waiting, the last couple of days can just kind of turn into you just rolling on the weather, rolling to see if you've got an event, and it is very rigid, so that might frustrate some people. The event cards, I wish they were a bit more prevalent, actually. I like the way it works, but I wish there was maybe a mandatory event card on each turn. Not the end of the world. But yeah, in short, I just think this game is awesome. I love the components, I love the gameplay, I love the theme. It's allowed me to explore this part of history, which I didn't really know much about, and I've become really interested in it now, and I'm looking for some books on the subject, because I just think it's a very obscure, cool part of British history, and I do like seeing the colonies get embarrassed, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I think if you're into solitaire gaming, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't pick this one up. That being said, watch some gameplay. I mean, hopefully you're watching this video at this point. Just see if this is for you, because I know some people aren't going to like that rigid sequence of play. They might think it's a bit too procedural, but I can tell you that it's not a dry game. There's a lot of personality in this game, and there's a really cool atmosphere to this game as well. I've been listening to the track Liquidity by Sun Ra a lot when I've been playing this, and I think it fits really well. So look that one up if you're playing. But yeah, I know I've said it 4 times. Great game, love this game. Full endorsement from me. I wish I had played this sooner, because it probably would have been on my my top 10 list for sure. Again, I forgot to mention I really love this this artwork on here too. That's a really cool, evocative painting. But yeah, big thumbs up. Hill of Doves, Godfrey Bailey, Legion Games. I think he's got another Solitaire Boer War game coming out soon called Failure on the Tagula. So excited for that. Keep my eyes peeled for that. Check out Legion War Games in general. You'll find something that you can't live without. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope this has informed your decision on the game if you're thinking about picking it up. Either way that be, if you see this and you think, oh, I was going to get that, but I don't really like the look of it, cool, glad I could help you there. Likewise, if you think you're going to pick it up, even more glad that I can help you with that too. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I say this in every video, sorry I haven't been uploading as much, just been very busy. I'm trying to get on top of it a bit more, but yeah, thank you. Let me know if you played the game, what you think. If there's anything you want me to cover, if you want me to go into a bit more detail about anything with this game, just drop me a line. I'd be more than willing to talk about it, even make another video. So yeah, cool. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.